He betrayed me in front of the entire world. Those weren't just whispered. They were carved into the hush of the courtroom like a knife. Meri Brown's voice shook, not with weakness but with a hurricane of pain and resolve that had been brewing for years. The gallery was stunned. Reporters took notes. Cameras snapped, and onlookers leaned forward as if the first words of her testimony had drained all the air from the room. Everyone had watched Meri on TV, the gentle wife, the forgotten partner, the woman perpetually standing at the edge of family photos. This version of her, though? This spark in her eyes? This was new. This was the Meri Brown the world had been longing to see. The judge pushed his glasses back up his nose. Kody Brown shifted in his seat, his golden blonde locks pulled back tightly, attempting to hide the discomfort writhing across his face. Next to him, Robyn Brown sat with her head hung low, though the barest whisper of a smile played on her lips. And Meri, now in a navy suit, her hair in a knot, no longer the dutiful wife but a woman on a mission, stood taller than she ever had before. She was no longer going to walk into family gatherings to be ignored. She was going into combat. The world watching outside the courthouse. The media spectacle roared like wildfire. Camera operators pushed against one another. Microphones thrust in the direction of anyone who was even remotely associated with the Brown family. Fans held up posters stating, "Justice for Meri," while critics whispered that this was merely another publicity stunt for fame. But the reality was evident. This was no longer about television. This was now about survival. For years, Meri had tolerated the shame of being excluded. She smiled graciously on camera, as Kody flaunted Robyn as the favorite wife. She bit her tongue as Kody rejected her efforts at intimacy, labeling her clingy, distant, or not compatible. She suffered through the notorious catfishing fiasco, where rather than support, she was belittled and ridiculed by her own family. Every betrayal was publicized. Every cut was broadcasted. And every time the world witnessed her in silence as she endured. But now the silence had been broken. The ghost of sacrifice. Meri's mind wandered as she took her seat at the plaintiff's table. She remembered the day she signed those divorce papers so Kody could legally marry Robyn. She had smiled for the cameras, insisted it was for the kids, but inside she had felt herself die a little. She recalled the late nights by herself, sitting on her inn's porch, seeing the lights darken in Kody's house down the street, while asking herself why she wasn't good enough. She recalled each vow Kody uttered, about forever love, about togetherness, about family sacrifice, and how each one had reduced to nothing in her hands. Now, looking at him sitting there across from her, arms folded as if he still had the upper hand, Meri knew this was not just about money or contracts. This was about taking back the parts of herself that she had lost. The courtroom atmosphere. The courtroom itself was a stage setting for the last act of a tragic event, decades in the making. The benches creaked with spectators' weight. The walls bore whispers of past cases, but none so sensational as this. Court officers watched the crowd warily, knowing at any moment passion might overflow. The air was heavy, thick, and nearly electric. The bailiff's voice rang out, "All rise." Everyone rose as the judge approached. Meri shut her eyes, murmured a silent prayer, then opened them with a steady determination that seemed to shock even those who did not believe in her. This was it. This stage was hers. Kody's smirk, Robyn's shadow. Kody leaned toward his attorney, whispering something, then leaned back with a smug grin that screamed arrogance. It was the same smirk he'd worn countless times on Sister Wives, when dismissing Meri's feelings, the same smirk that told her she was always less than. Robyn, meanwhile, sat like a shadow beside him. She adjusted her necklace, her eyes darting across the courtroom as if measuring every reaction. Some fans whispered that Robyn was the true puppeteer, the quiet manipulator who had orchestrated Meri's downfall from the very beginning. Meri caught her eye. For an instant, their eyes met, a silent battlefield. One woman who lost all due to sacrifice, and another who gained all due to ambition. The silence between them was louder than any testimony could be. "The judge speaks, Mrs. Brown," the judge stated, his tone firm, You are free to go ahead with your opening statement. Meri stood. Her attorney nodded reassuringly, but Meri didn't need reassurance. She had been living this narrative for decades. She faced the courtroom, her voice unflinching though her heart thumped. I stand here today not only as a mother, not only as a wife, but as a woman who gave everything to a man who betrayed me to the entire world. I was silenced and pushed away, and treated as if my value could be discarded. But I stand here today to tell you, I will no longer be disposable. Her words landed like thunder. A murmur rippled through the gallery. Even Kody's smirk faltered. The flashbacks, years of pain. Meri's lawyer began painting the picture. But her own memories played like a film reel in her mind. She saw herself as a young bride, full of hope, believing Kody's promises of eternal love and unity. She saw the early years when they dreamed of building a family empire together. Then came the cracks. The jealousy, the favoritism, the arrival of Robyn. The way Kody's eyes sparkled for his new wife in ways they never sparkled for her anymore. The way holidays turned into battles for scraps of attention. The way Meri's voice was drowned out in family meetings, dismissed as emotional or overreacting. And the worst part, millions of people saw it. The world had seen her shattered. Her breakups, her attempts to cling to love that was slipping away from her. He betrayed me in front of the whole world, she repeated. Louder this time, her voice cracking but firm. The energy shifts. Something changed in the courtroom. The reporters quit scribbling and just looked. Spectators leaned forward, jaws clenched. The bailiff cleared his throat, as if even he weren't proof against the tension. This wasn't another celebrity trial. This was a woman standing up to decades of manipulation. A voice cutting through years of silence. Kody moved once more, adjusting his collar. Robyn gnawed on her lip, her fingers tapping anxiously against the table. For once the power was shifting in their favor. The rise of Meri Brown. Meri took her seat, and her attorney put a reassuring hand on her arm. You did it, they whispered. But Meri knew this was only the start. She hadn't come seeking sympathy. She had come seeking justice, seeking dignity, seeking truth. She glanced out at the mass of cameras assembled outside, at the strangers' eyes that had watched her story for so long, and thought, if I must expose my scars to the world so that no other woman feels as helpless, then let it be so. The hook was set. The story was in motion. And the world would never look at Meri Brown the same way again. The courtroom had barely settled after Meri's opening words when her lawyer, a sharp, steady woman named Angela Carter, stood with a folder in her hands. Her voice carried authority, cutting through the silence like steel. Your Honor, she started. This case is not one of a bad marriage. This is one of a man who created his empire on deception, manipulation, and control over emotions. All at my client Meri Brown's expense. The words hung uncomfortably in the air. On the other side of the aisle, Kody fidgeted in his seat, arms still crossed, jaw set in defiance. He appeared to be a man trapped but too haughty to admit it. Robyn beside him gazed down at the table, though her lips curled with that subtle knowing smile, a smile that appeared to taunt Meri from afar. Angela opened the folder and started spreading papers on the evidence table. We will show evidence, she went on, that Kody Brown pressured Meri into relinquishing her legal marriage so he could marry Robyn, not for altruistic motives, as he asserted, but to gain control, secure financial benefits, and cast aside the very woman who constructed his foundation. The gallery erupted with gasps and whispers. Fans who had watched the show for years shared knowing glances. For them this wasn't news. It was confirmation of what they had suspected all along. The divorce papers. Angela held aloft the first exhibit, a copy of the divorce papers. Here is the paper where Meri Brown formally divorced Kody legally in 2014. He said it was for the good of the family, for the purpose of adopting Robyn's children. But then what, Your Honor? Was Meri still an equal wife afterward? No, she was pushed further and further aside, replaced by Robyn within the family. She passed the documents to the bailiff, who handed them to the judge. The courtroom groaned in silence as the judge scanned the documents. Mary's heart pounded as she watched. She remembered that day clearly. The pen shaking in her hand, the tears she refused to let anyone see. She had told herself it was for the children, for the good of the family, but deep down she had known it was the beginning of her erasure. The financial records, then the bank records, and business filings. Angela projected them on a screen for all to see. These documents indicate how, once Meri took a back seat, financial decisions started excluding her. Profit from family business activities was diverted. Investments were done without consulting her. And yet, she had been a founding member of this family dynasty. The figures blinked on the screen. Thousands of dollars transferred. Accounts opened and closed. Signatures lacking where hers would have been. Kody pushed forward in his chair. His cheeks flushed. She did this, he snapped. Angela spun around. Did it, or was she manipulated? Mr. Brown, let the court decide. The judge gave Kody a stern look. Mr. Brown, you will hold your tongue until your time to testify. The gallery broke into murmurs. Robyn's face went pale. For once, Kody's loud voice was brought low by authority he couldn't command. The humiliation evidence. Angela transitioned to her next line of argument, her tone level. Beyond coercion of funds, we will have evidence of emotional abuse, public humiliation, ongoing belittling. My client was forced to endure, not in secret, but in front of millions of viewers on national television. The courtroom screens flickered, and suddenly clips from sister wives appeared. Kody dismissing Mary's concerns, calling her distant, refusing her affection, speaking of her as though she were a burden rather than a partner. Gasps filled the room. Even those who had watched the show on television years ago felt the sting of seeing it now, stripped of the entertainment context, laid bare as evidence of cruelty. Meri dropped her head, tears welling up in her eyes as she watched herself on TV, years of rejection condensed into agonizing seconds. But when she looked up again, her expression hardened with steel. He turned my agony into a narrative, she breathed, her words barely audible to the judge. The witnesses stepped forward. Angela's first witness was a former production assistant from the show. Nervously but resolutely, the young woman spoke about moments off camera in which Kody mocked Meri openly, calling her useless and clingy. She talked about times when producers encouraged Kody to be affectionate for the cameras before he would laugh and refuse, once the cameras stopped rolling. Next up was a family member, who had witnessed the deterioration firsthand. He described dinners in which Meri was excluded from conversation, holidays at which her presence were overshadowed, and nights in which she was left alone, while Robyn was fawned over by Kody. Every one of these testimonies was a knife to Kody's meticulously crafted public persona. Kody's defense collapses. At last Angela turned to Kody himself. Mr. Brown, can you stand before this court and deny that you consistently pushed my client out of her position in this family? Kody pounded his fist on the table. I gave her everything. She was miserable because she decided to be miserable. Don't make me out to be the bad guy. Angela didn't blink. She moved closer, her tone cold. Then why is it, Mr. Brown, that all of the evidence we've put before you contradicts each other? Financial records, court documents, video evidence, testimony, all of them leading to one truth, that you betrayed the woman who built your empire. The courtroom erupted in whispers, gasps, and tension so thick it was choking. Mary's silent pain. All through, Meri sat silently, her hands tightly clasped together. She did not need to say anything yet. Her silence was a force. Her tears were a force. Whenever the camera cut to her face, the world saw not only a woman standing up for justice, but a woman taking back her dignity. She recalled each solitary night, each hissed insult, each chilled stare. And with each new piece of evidence, she knew something she hadn't known before. This wasn't about proving Kody wrong. It was about proving herself right. She had always believed she was abused. Now the world did too. The courtroom erupts. As Angela concluded her presentation of evidence, tension snapped. Those in the gallery murmured frantically. Reporters scurried out to send breaking news. And even the judge called for order several times. Silence in the courtroom. The bailiff thundered. Meri shut her eyes tight. Inhaling deeply, she felt lighter, freer. as if each document, each testimonial, each agonizing clip took something off her shoulders. The truth could no longer be concealed in the underbrush of reality television. The truth was present, on the record, irrefutable. And finally, Kody Brown didn't appear so unassailable. He appeared vulnerable. The cliffhanger of conflict. The judge leaned back, his fingers interlocked. Evidence we've heard causes us concern, and this court will take it into consideration. We will now call testimony. The gavel came down, indicating a brief recess. As the courtroom emptied into pandemonium, Meri remained seated, her hands firm. She had weathered the tempest of proof. Now came the more difficult task. The confrontation itself. She slowly turned her head, her eyes meeting Kody's across the room. His scowl was icy, but behind it for the first time, she glimpsed fear. His empire constructed on her sacrifice was beginning to unravel, and she was the one wielding the hammer. The gavel came down 3 sharp times, snapping the buzzing courtroom back to attention. Proceed with testimony, he stated, his voice stern, his eyes sweeping over both sides. This was the moment for which everyone had been waiting. The confrontation where words would sting sharper than blades, and truths hidden beneath years of silence would claw their way into the light. Kody takes the stand. The bailiff called Kody Brown to the witness stand. The room grew tense, breaths held as he swaggered forward. His posture screamed arrogance, but there was a tremor in his steps he couldn't quite hide. He raised his hand, swore his oath, and sat down, leaning back like a king forced into a peasant's chair. Angela Carter, Meri's lawyer, wasted no time. Mr. Brown, she started, isn't it a fact that in 2014, you divorced my client, not for love or necessity, but to marry Robyn Brown and adopt her children? Kody snorted, his lips rising into a sneer. It was for the family. Meri agreed. It was her idea. Actually, she wanted to help. She supported me. Angela moved forward, her heels clicking like gunfire. So you say that this was Meri's decision? Yes, Kody asserted. She made sacrifices, because she was concerned about the children. She was virtuous. Angela interrupted him. And yet, following the divorce, did you give her the same level of respect as an equal partner? Or did you distance her, exclude her from making decisions, and switch all attention to Robyn? Kody's jaw clenched in anger. That's not accurate. I afforded Meri opportunities. She chose to be aloof. She pushed me away. The gallery burst into murmurs. Angela raised a hand. Order, please. Then she faced Kody, her gaze focused on him like a predator eyeing prey. Mr. Brown, let me remind you, you are sworn to tell the truth. Did you, or did you not, make public comments that you had no desire for Meri, that you regarded her as a burden, and that your marriage was dead? Kody's smirk wavered. I was telling the truth. I didn't want to lie to the audience. Angela slammed a paper down on the table. So let me get this straight. On national television, you embarrassed your wife before an entire nation, devaluing her worth not in private therapy, but as entertainment. Is that true? The room fell silent. Kody's face reddened, his mouth gaping but nothing emerging. The judge leaned over. Tell me the answer, Mr. Brown. At last, gritting his teeth, Kody mumbled. Yes, gasp waves swept the courtroom. Meri had her eyes shut, bracing herself, the memory of that incident crashing in on her like a wave. Angela's fire. Angela jumped in. You say Meri consented to all of it, but tell me, Mr. Brown, did you frame it as an option when you coerced her into abandoning her legal marriage, or did you give her the choice of possibly saving the family? Kody stuttered, his confidence collapsing. I explained it was crucial, for the children, for our heritage. So you manipulated her love for the family, Angela retorted. Kody pounded his fist on the stand. No, she knew what she was doing. Or maybe she, Angela insisted, her voice growing louder, did what she thought she needed to do. Because you talked her into feeling like destroying her marriage was the only way she could show loyalty. The room erupted in whispers once more, the tension strangling. Meri's testimony. The judge banged for order, then nodded at Angela. Call your next witness. Meri Brown. The room fell silent at once. Meri stood up slowly, her legs trembling but not her determination. She walked to the witness stand, her heels clacking like war drums. When she was seated, she laced her fingers together, regulating her breathing. Angela smiled sweetly. Meri, can you tell the court what it felt like to sign those divorce papers? Mary's eyes welled up as she talked. It was like I was signing away my life. Kody said it was for the children, for the family. He said that if I loved them, I would do it. And I believed him. I thought, if I made sacrifices, he would still love me. That maybe, just maybe, my place would still be valid. Her voice trembled, tears spilling down her face. But then that day came and everything changed. I wasn't his wife anymore. I was invisible. The gallery sniffled, some of them wiping away tears. Even the judge's expression softened. Angela nodded. And when you attempted to reach out, to rebuild, Mary's lip quivered. He turned me down. Every single time. On film. Off film. He said our marriage was over. That he wasn't interested in me. That he made me beg for crumbs of love. And then he ridiculed me for it. The words sliced through the room like glass. Angela hesitated, allowing the silence to carry the burden of Mary's words. Then she asked, "Why are you here today, Meri?" Meri tossed back her head, her tone strict now. "Because love shouldn't equal disappearing. Marriage shouldn't equal giving up your value. I sacrificed everything to him, and he gave me nothing. I'm here because I won't be quiet anymore." The crossfire Kody's attorney, a lanky man by the name of Richard, stood up quickly to cross-examine. His voice was cutting, nearly condescending. "Mrs. Brown, isn't it a fact that you carried on an online affair? That you were catfished? Doesn't that indicate that you were already being unfaithful to this marriage?" The room gasped. Meri winced, but then regained her footing. "Yes," she said, her voice firm. "I was lonely. I was desperate. I wanted someone to listen, someone to care. I was wrong, and I've acknowledged that. But that error did not occur in isolation. It occurred because my husband left me long before I ever even talked to anyone on the internet." The gallery was in accord. Even the judge nodded. Angela stood up for a swift deflection. "Meri, did that one experience wipe away decades of sacrifice, loyalty and love you shared with this family?" "No," Meri asserted. "One error does not cancel out a lifetime of giving." But Kody wanted it to. He wanted a reason to dismiss me. And he used that as his rationale. The turning tide. Angela came at her with the coup grace. "Your Honor," she addressed the judge, "we have demonstrated not only the financial coercion, but also the emotional abuse, the manipulation, the humiliation. My client is not here to play victim. She's here to demonstrate that she was cornered, controlled, and discarded by a man who professed to love her. And the evidence speaks for itself." The judge leaned back, visibly shaken by the testimonies. Kody sat frozen, his smirk gone, his face pale. Robyn squeezed his arm, whispering frantically, but his eyes were locked on Meri, eyes that for the first time seemed unsure, even afraid. The battle of words had left scars across the courtroom, but one thing was clear. Mary's voice was louder now than it had ever been, and it wasn't done yet. The cliffhanger. The judge cleared his throat. "This court will adjourn for today. We will continue tomorrow with closing arguments and final deliberation." The gavel fell, but the reverberations of the day's war hung in the air like thunder. Meri stood, with her lawyer at her side. She looked over again at Kody. He glared at her, but his eyes faltered under hers. For once, she wasn't the wife who was forgotten. She was the woman who had the courage to stand up against him in the one arena he couldn't dominate her in, the courtroom. As she exited, camera flashes dazed her. Reporters yelling questions. Fans chanting her name. But Meri did not blink. She stood upright, her shoulders straight. This was not the end. The verdict awaited her tomorrow. But for tonight, the world knew, Meri Brown had finally found her voice. The courtroom was thick with silence, a storm poised to unleash itself. The judge summoned Meri Brown to return to the stand. She proceeded slowly, her heels clicking against the buffed floor, each step a bell-like toll. She sat, her hands clasped, her eyes shining. She couldn't speak for a moment. The entire room breathed. Even Kody tipped forward, his condescension abandoned for a spark of nervousness. At last, Meri lifted her head. Her voice trembled, but was loud enough to cut through the silence. "I need to tell the truth," she started. "The confession of sacrifice. I stayed in this marriage because I believed in family." Meri said, her voice cracking. I stayed because I thought that love equaled sacrifice. For years I kept telling myself that if I gave enough, if I suffered enough, if I loved hard enough, that he would see me, that he would love me back. Her eyes brimmed with tears. But sacrifice without love is slavery, and that's what I became. His slave. Not in chains you can see, but in chains you feel. Every time you're told you're not enough. The gallery whispered softly, several people covering their mouths. A woman in the back row wiped her eyes on a tissue. The loneliness laid bare. Mary's voice stabilized as she went on. Do you have any idea what it is like to sit at home in your own house and feel like a stranger? To see your husband laugh at someone else, and you sitting there in the corner, invisible? To lie awake at night, staring at the ceiling, trying to figure out what you did wrong, why you don't deserve love. She looked at Kody, her eyes piercing with years of suppressed hurt. I pleaded with him to speak with me. I pleaded with him to hold me. And do you know what he told me? That he wasn't attracted to me. That our marriage was dead. He didn't whisper it in private. He didn't tell me with tenderness. He proclaimed it to the world, while I had to sit there and smile through my tears. Kody shifted uncomfortably, his face reddening, but the judge shot him a warning look. The betrayal revisited. Mary's hands trembled as she gripped the edges of the stand. I sacrificed my legal marriage for him. I forfeited my rights as his wife, because he said it was for the family. He said it was for the children. And I trusted him. I believed every word because I loved him, because I trusted him. But as soon as I surrendered to him what he desired, I was discarded, replaced, forgotten. She shook her head in slow horror, her tears running freely now. I wasn't a wife anymore. I was a placeholder, a background character in my own marriage. And the worst part, millions of people watched it happen. I was betrayed, not just in my home, but in front of the whole world. The words struck like thunder, resonating across the silent room. The judge leans. And the judge leaned forward, his brow furrowed. Mrs. Brown, he said softly, you don't have to continue if it's too painful. But Meri shook her head firmly. No, Your Honor. I've been silent too long. My silence was my prison. Today I'm breaking it. The turning of the gallery. Mary's words seemed to transform the entire room. The gallery, once filled with murmurs and curiosity, now sat rapt, every pair of eyes fixed on her. Even the reporters who came chasing headlines forgot their pens for a moment. For years the world had seen her as the quiet one, the background wife. But here now, she was no longer invisible. She was undeniable. The catfishing scandal reclaimed. Meri breathed deeply. I know that people remember the catfishing scandal. They say it's my shame. But I want you to know why it happened. I was lonely. I was desperate to be connected to someone who would see me, hear me, care about me. And yes, I did something wrong. But my wrongdoing was born of loneliness, of abandonment, of a marriage that had already died long before that scandal even occurred. She spoke to Kody once more, her tone acidic. You used that error to justify dumping me, to characterize me as unfaithful. But you left me long before I ever called anyone else. That fiasco wasn't why we failed. It was because of it. The room devolved into murmurs. Even some of Kody's supporters in the audience bowed their heads. Her breaking silence. Meri squared her shoulders, her tears replaced by fire. Years I swallowed my pain, so he could be seen as a good man. I smiled for the camera while my heart broke. I said to the world that I was okay while I wept. Alone in the dark of night, I silenced me so he could shine. She took a pause, raising her voice. But silence is not love. Silence is not loyalty. Silence is death. And today I choose to live. The courtroom rocked with emotion. Some onlookers applauded before being quieted by the bailiff. Angela's last push. Angela took a step forward, her voice soft now. Meri, what do you want from this case? What are you fighting for? Mary's response was quick. I do not wish for revenge. I do not wish to destroy him. I wish for accolades. I wish for the truth to be recognized. I wish for the world to know that I wasn't mad. I wasn't bitter. I wasn't clingy. I was a woman who gave everything. And I was betrayed. I wish to get my dignity back. I wish to get my freedom back. And I wish for every woman watching. Know this: you do not have to remain where you are not appreciated. Tears flowed down faces throughout the gallery. Even the judge's eyes welled up. Kody's outburst abruptly. Kody couldn't hold back. He leapt to his feet, his voice bellowing. This is lies. She's turning everything around. I gave her a family, a life, a legacy, and this is how she pays me back. With slander? The judge hammered his gavel angrily. Mr. Brown, sit down at once. But Kody's anger only intensified. His face contorted, his voice breaking. She never was happy. She was always the issue. Don't let her be a victim. The gallery jeered, shouts ringing out. Robyn pulled frantically on his arm, her face pale, but he broke free from her grasp. The judge spoke in a firm tone. Mr. Brown, one more such outburst, and you will be held in contempt. Lastly, Kody leaned back again, fuming, his chest rising with anger. And Meri? She didn't react. She didn't back down. She looked at him serenely. Her tears traded for courage. Once his fury no longer controlled her. The emotional shift order was restored once more by the judge's call, his gavel ringing through the courtroom. When quiet returned, all attention shifted back to Meri. And in that silence, something deep moved. The gallery no longer regarded her as a victim. They regarded her as a survivor, as a warrior, a woman who had borne the burden of shame, and at last put it down. And Kody, for the very first time, he appeared small. His kingdom of words, his picture of domination, had been torn apart by the quiet strength of the truth. The cliffhanger to the verdict. The judge's voice was soft. Mrs. Brown, your words have been heard, and will carry a great weight with this court's judgment. You may be seated. Meri nodded slowly, getting up carefully, her legs shaking, but her spirit unbroken. As she moved towards her seat, the gallery once more exploded in whispers, many of them nodding at her respectfully. She sat down beside Angela, who whispered, You've already won, Meri. No matter what the verdict says, you've already won. And for the first time in years, Meri believed it. Tomorrow, the judge would deliver the verdict. Tomorrow, the world would know the outcome. But tonight, one truth was clear. Meri Brown had broken her silence, and nothing would ever silence her again. The day the verdict came was heavy with tension that hovered above the courthouse like storm clouds before rain. Journalists thronged the steps. Cameras blazed, and the air vibrated with anticipation. Within, the courtroom was as full as it could get, every bench occupied by observers, journalists, and supporters. Meri appeared with Angela in tow. She was dressed in a plain navy dress, her face tranquil, her shoulders straight. But her eyes told of the tempest within, a blend of fear, hope, and exhaustion. On the other side of the aisle, Kody burst in, Robyn following hot on his heels. He was tense, his jaw set, his suit rumpled from having gotten little sleep the night before. The arrogance that once lingered on his face had been overcome by nervousness. The judge came in. The room stood. The gavel rang out. All rise, court is now in session. Everyone sat, but nobody let their guard down. This was the moment everyone had been waiting for. The judge's address. The judge cleared his throat and looked around the room. Having sat through weeks of testimony, evidence, and tearful disclosures, this court is now ready to hand down its verdict in the case of Meri Brown v. Kody Brown. The courtroom froze. Even breathing sounded too harsh. This case wasn't about money, contracts, or celebrity, the judge went on. It was about dignity, about truth, about whether promises given in love can be thrown away without repercussions. He stopped, his gaze flashing at Kody. Miss Brown, you come in front of us as a patriarch, an honorable man, a head of a family, but the evidence and the testimony paint a different picture, one of control, neglect, and betrayal. Kody shifted, his expression clouding. The judge shifted his attention to Meri. Mrs. Brown, your testimony brought out the intense personal hurt you endured, hurt amplified by its public nature. You testified with honesty, even regarding your own errors. That takes a lot of courage. The courtroom fell silent as the judge took up his notes. This court finds in favor of Meri Brown. Gasps rippled across the room. Robyn covered her mouth. Kody's face turned red, his fists clenched tightly against the table. The judge's voice rang clear. Mr. Brown, in this court's view, you did in fact emotionally and psychologically damage Mrs. Brown by public humiliation, neglect, and manipulation, and the annulment of your marriage does not undo the years of devotion, sacrifice, and contribution she gave. You will pay financial damages for the losses incurred, including her equity in the family's assets. Meri's hand flew to her mouth. Tears pooled in her eyes. For once they were tears of release, not sorrow. The gallery erupted in whispers, some even clapping before the bailiff barked for silence. But the judge wasn't finished. The moral verdict: this decision transcends finances. The judge went on. It's a statement. Marriage is not ownership. It is not domination. It is a union, and when one person gives up everything and the other gives nothing back, the damage cannot be overlooked. This court sees Mrs. Brown's pain and respects her entitlement to freedom, dignity, and respect. The words hit the air like thunder. Even those who came doubting Meri now nodded, many with tears in their eyes. Mary's tears of liberation. Angela squeezed Mary's hand tightly. "You did it," she whispered. But Meri shook her head, her tears falling softly. "No," she said quietly. "We did it. Every woman who has ever been silenced, every wife who's ever felt invisible, we all did it today." She stood slowly, her back to the gallery. Cameras honed in, catching her quivering but brilliant smile. She wasn't hiding, she wasn't pretending, she was standing in her truth. Kody's collapse. Kody pounded his fist on the table, his voice thundering. "This is injustice. This is a circus. You're all against me." The judge brought down his gavel. "Mr. Brown, calm down. You are already teetering on contempt." But Kody went on. "I gave her everything. I constructed a family. I sacrificed, not her." His voice broke, desperation seeping into his fury. But the gallery no longer saw a leader. They saw a man disintegrating, his kingdom collapsing before their eyes. Robyn pulled at his arm, telling him to stop in a whisper, but he shook her off. His eyes blazed at Meri. "You'll regret this. You'll regret betraying me." But Meri? She didn't blink. She gazed at him serenely, her tears evaporating into resolve. "No, Kody, what I do regret is wasting all those years waiting for you to notice me." There was a deafening silence that followed, the aftermath outside court. Once the session had ended, the courthouse erupted with commotion. Reporters surged, cameras going off, microphones jostling forward. But Meri did not disguise this time. She walked out onto the steps of the courthouse, Angela beside her. The crowd fell silent as she raised her hand softly. "I did it to find justice," she declared, her voice firm, "and I found it. But more than that, I came here to take back my voice. For too long I have been silent, thinking my value was dependent on another person's love. Today I know better. My value is my own. My tale is my own, and my future is my own." The audience cheered, with many of them yelling out her name. A few of the women in the crowd had signs that proclaimed, "We stand with Meri." Others were crying and wiping their cheeks. Kody and Robyn's exit. While Kody stormed out a separate door, his head hung low as he followed behind him. Robyn. Reporters yelled questions. "Kody, do you regret the way you treated Meri? Do you think the verdict was fair?" But he kept walking, his face scrunched up in anger. For the first time, Kody Brown was not the center of his own tale. He was the bad guy leaving in defeat. The epilogue. A new beginning. That night, Meri sat alone in her home. The lights were dim, a single candle flickering on the table. She held a cup of tea in her hands, her heart finally light. She whispered softly to herself, "I'm free." Her phone buzzed with messages of support, from fans, from friends, from women who had found courage in her testimony. She read one aloud. "Because of you, I'm leaving my toxic marriage tomorrow. Thank you, Meri." Her tears fell again, but this time, they were tears of hope. The decision wasn't merely about dollars, or agreements, or even Kody. It was about change, about shattering silence, about taking back a voice that had been lost for decades. And in that stillness, Meri smiled. Not for having vanquished Kody, but for finally vanquishing herself. Closing line. The court's decision reverberated far beyond the courthouse walls. It resonated into homes, into marriages, into the hearts of all the women who had been silenced. For Meri Brown, justice wasn't served, it was lived. And from this day on, her silence would never again be her prison. It would be her strength.